Thank you for returning to this course. I am Sophia Worrell. Let us continue on this day 5 because it gets more interesting. Today I'm going to talk about how revolution leads to inventions. I want to conclude this history lesson by showing you how civilizations were built. God created human beings to have dominion over the world and not the other way around. In our complex bodies, He placed the brain for us to think and reason. Animals do not have that capacity. They move by instinct in contrast to humans who has the ability to act based on what we think and reason. Our reasoning abilities is directly responsible for us always seeking for something better. This has allowed for revolutions in the way in which we do things. The capacity to think allows us to ask questions, and the ability to reason permits us to seek explanations and answers to those questions. The worldview of other ethnic groups has allowed them to seek for and gain control over their environment. It is how civilized societies were formed. Trade relations, ownership, public works such as roads, inventions of tools, and innovation began to happen, causing a form of government to manage cities. This kind of complex society, social and economic positions open a way for people to keep track of all that was happening, unlike that of a simple society that remained primitive in its way of living. With record keeping needed for each business transaction as well as for planning of the overall operations, schooling came into play because the ability to read and write would ensure that a proper history and management of records were maintained. The inventions that came about can be credited to societies who progressed from foraging or hunting and gathering to farming, agriculture, and pasteurization as people shifted the way they operated and organized themselves. As groups continued to move outward, they discovered lands that were unoccupied and some that already were. For instance, when the early settlers moved to North Africa, they found that as the climate changed, it made agriculture difficult to continue. And so those settlers moved from the Sahara Desert to the Nile River, and the Egyptian civilization was formed. Pharaohs became rulers, and the development of the world exploded. Empires like Mesopotamia or now modern day Iraq, the Babylonian Empire, the Hittites, and the Assyrians emerged. Their neighbors, the Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews, also began to fight to rule and conquer the world. All of these give rise to the Chinese dynasties and early writings instead of symbols and images. Building on all of this was India, where advances in sciences, languages, and social understanding materialized and impacted later on civilization. Out of modern day Iran emerged the Persians who ruled over the Greece. After many years of war, the Greeks helped to develop the modern world. However, the successes and achievements of the Greeks are based on the advances of prior civilization. Shipbuilding and sailing techniques were enacted to create large trading networks. Many men began studying the stars and improving how medicine was performed. Writing presses were invented, and mathematical systems came into play. Primitive practices give way to sophisticated ways of viewing and studying the world. It was the Roman Empire that started religion, which gave way to the Reformation and the Enlightenment age, where philosophy materialized. Agriculture gave way to industry, and industry blossomed into technology. All of this could never be possible without men and women who used their brain power. Through much thought, reasoning, arguments, debates, agreements, and inventive processes, we would not have been given all that we enjoy in the world today. Each civilization built on the other and moved people from ancient practices to modern innovations to accommodate the increasing demands of a world that was growing in numbers. There was a natural progression in understanding the behaviors of animals and the life cycle of plants. In using their knowledge of crops and wildlife, each evolving civilization pushed the envelope to apply the information to other disciplines. This kind of experimentation was not really about how it was done, but why it was done. They wanted to control their environment instead of being controlled by outdated systems that were in control of them. Animal domestication and mechanical labor took much pressure off of the human to be used in other ways. As industry grew, so did the way in which trade was done, and this led to the exchange of money. Each system called for more sophisticated ways of contracting business, and market systems were developed. Retribution systems came into play to redistribute according to the needs of the recipients. So let's look at how cultural differences are defined. It may appear at times that some cultures believe that their particular cultural system is correct and their way of doing things is the right way, and in some cases that may be true. This may cause another cultural group to feel as though judgments are made on them based on a particular cultural idea and worldview. But while this might seem to be so, there is a basic foundation, and that foundation is found in family. It's found in schooling, and it's found in the professions, and that is what characterizes all of us. The fact is, all cultures are based on family. There can be no human brought into the world unless a man and a woman engage in sexual intercourse. The best practices are for them to produce in a marriage setting so as to give the child or children the benefits of a safe haven. The family unit is essential because it positions the child for their place in society. The effect the child has in or on society hinges on them coming from a strong family unit. I have given you the foundation on which the world was developed. Now it is time for me to set the framework for the game of life. There are many of us of African descent that are now being stereotyped with those who act barbaric and unintelligent. Their thug-like behavior is not what we want represented in our culture anymore. Because that is not God's way. That is not the American way. And it is time to build a culture that is peaceful, loving, and kind. Thank you.